folks. Well, I'm back in the Cascades today, west side of the Cascades, near Vesper Peak. Here for the disappearance of Sam Sayers, but not going up Vesper Peak. I actually got a little something more interesting than that, I think. It's a beautiful day out. It is raining, overcast, and cold. Typical Washington weather. Very fun to go out and adventure in. Typical Washington weather. Now, instead I will go to my future self and he will tell you exactly what it is I'm doing here and why. Hey there folks, future me here. This video is going to take a bit of a different route than usual, but ultimately it is about the disappearance of Samantha Sayers at Vesper Peak in Washington State back in 2018. To this day, she has never been found. This is another one of those cases that I've had recommended to me countless times, but truth be told, I'm not quite ready to do a full and comprehensive video on the subject. There's still a lot more information I need before I get to that point, and I can already tell that when I do that video, it's probably going to be a long one. So given that this is the case, this video is actually going to steer more into the realms of psychic visions and the paranormal, which if you watch this channel, you know I'm a bit skeptical of, but still remain open-minded. You see, in December of last year, 2023, I was contacted by an individual who said he had some psychic visions on where the remains of Samantha Sayers may be found. After corresponding with this man for some time, I figured it might be worth it to actually investigate this claim myself, even if the chances of success seemed remote. So that's the short story, but we still need to go over all the details. But first, I think it is important that I provide a general overview and timeline of the Samantha Sayers case. That way you have a good understanding of the location, the story, and why it has been difficult to find any evidence of what happened. But before we get into all of that, let me tell you about something very scary that happened to me recently. Just 1 week before I started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video, I had my checking account information stolen, and I'm not even kidding about that. It can happen to you at any time, and it's always an unpleasant experience. It's a messed up feeling knowing that someone out there has access to your personal information and is using it for their own gain. I couldn't help but wonder how they got my info in the first place. When you do a little research, you find out just how much of our personal data is being sold by data brokers to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who wants to target us. It's not just our email addresses and phone numbers that are being sold, it's our full names, home addresses, health records, and even information about our relatives. That is a scary thing to think about. Luckily, Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests on my behalf. By cleaning up my information, I'm not only reducing the amount of spam I receive, but also protecting myself from hackers who could use this information to access my social media, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. It's not just data brokers we need to worry about either. Recently, AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records, both existing and former, were released on the dark web. They recommend those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Well, Aura does all this for me, and best of all, I don't have to download several different apps just because a company couldn't keep my data secure. Everyone should value their privacy, and you can go to aura.com/enigma to start your 2-week free trial, or click the link in the description. Don't be like me and wait until your account gets hacked. Samantha Sayers was 27 years old at the time in question. Known to most people as Sam, she was originally from Pennsylvania, but fell in love with the grand mountains and deep woods of Washington State. She would eventually move to the city of Seattle, where endless hikes and nature were always only a short drive away. She lived with her boyfriend, Kevin Dares, a Louisiana native, and the two were just in the beginning stages of building a life together. Sam was self-employed as a cleaner for Airbnbs. She kept her head shaved due to an autoimmune condition that resulted in alopecia, or hair loss. Her love of the wilderness led to Sam becoming an experienced hiker, with Kevin often joining her on some weekend outings. She was known to many to be charismatic and full of life. When the day came for her to hike up Vesper Peak, it really should have been a day like any other. Vesper Peak sits around 6,200 feet in elevation and lies in the North Cascades. To get to the trail, you have to take an easily missed forest road off of the Mountain Loop Highway and then south into a deep valley surrounded by numerous towering peaks. The road ends where the Sunrise Mine trailhead begins, and the route up to Vesper Peak is around 4 miles one way, with an elevation gain of about 4,200 feet. It's a rough and hazardous trail that requires a lot of scrambling up rock fields. Like many rocky mountainsides, there is no real trail to speak of for much of the hike. You simply know that you need to get to the top. This can create more dangers for hikers who could potentially wander off or fall. Sam looked for someone to make the climb with her, but was unable to find a partner. Still, that did not deter her, and she planned to leave early in the morning and get to a place where she could call Kevin around 6 p.m. that evening, if not earlier. That day she was wearing her workout leggings, a sports bra, a blue backpack, and she was carrying 2 hiking poles, not unlike the numerous pictures you can find of her online. Sam left her home around 8 a.m. on August 1st, 2018. She was driving alone as she traveled along the Mountain Loop Highway and eventually down the forest road leading to the trailhead. Kevin sent her a text that morning reminding her to be careful, as he knew the dangers of the route but still trusted in Sam's experience. She responded that she knew and that she loved him. There was no doubt in Kevin's mind that he would see her later that night. Unfortunately, it would be the last contact they had. Sam wouldn't arrive at the trailhead until around 10 to 10:30 a.m., where she would park, sign the trail register, and begin her hike. Multiple people saw Sam as she made her way up toward Vesper Peak. One witness later saw Sam at the summit, and the time was somewhere around 2 to 3 p.m. She was sitting down and eating a sandwich and watching some other rock climbers in the area. Sam was also seen talking to some other climbers while hanging around at the summit. Shortly thereafter, Sam was seen going down a snow-covered ridge on the south side of the mountain, which a witness noted as being the wrong direction to be traveling. The witness said that by the time he saw her, she was too far away to try shouting, and he wasn't carrying a whistle. This individual was immediately concerned for her safety, but could not have known the eventual outcome of this situation. Time would pass, and as 6 p.m. rolled around, Kevin would not hear from Sam. Obviously, this caused him great concern as her phone would go to voicemail, but there is generally no reception in that area of the mountains anyway. Still, everything indicated that Sam had not made it out of the Cascades that evening. By 7 p.m., Kevin was already on the road and heading up to the trailhead himself, despite the looming darkness. He knew that Sam would always stick to her timeline, and it was very unusual and concerning to not hear from her. Kevin arrived at the trailhead somewhere around 9 to 10 p.m. He immediately noticed Sam's blue Ford Fiesta still sitting in the parking area. Carrying only a flashlight, Kevin wandered up the trail in the dark, searching the mountain. After a few hours with no success, Kevin would fall and break his flashlight while scrambling up the rocky mountainside. He was forced to walk back to his car in the dark and leave the area, driving 30 minutes away in order to call 911 and start a search and rescue. He was later met by a sergeant from the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office who followed him back to the trailhead around 2 a.m. By 6 to 7 a.m. on August 2nd, the search for Sam Sayers was already kicking off as the sun was rising. This search would turn into a huge operation, involving just about everything you could imagine. Ground searchers, drones, canines, helicopters, volunteers. The search would go on for weeks, and continue even after the sheriff's office had pulled out. Thousands of man-hours would go into the search for Sam, but she wouldn't be found. Now, that is a very bare bones and basic description of the disappearance and search. The lack of any definitive ending to Sam's story led to many theories, as it always does. These theories range from legitimate and rational to bizarre and borderline ridiculous. As always happens in a case like this, people ask, is she even still on the mountain? Or is she even still in the region? Could someone have come along and abducted her or carried her out of the area? The likelihood of foul play in a case such as this is minuscule. The area is simply too remote. Stealing people from mountainsides is pretty much the most difficult way you could possibly go about kidnapping someone. Then there's foul play in the other sense. What if someone just wanted to do her harm? These kinds of predators generally don't go after people on mountainsides either. In addition to that, there was actually a lot of other people on the mountain that day, a lot of witnesses. Keep in mind, she was last seen going the wrong direction alone. The likeliest explanation is that she is still out there somewhere, waiting to be found. Searches for Sam Sayers continue even to this day. Most are conducted by independent volunteers or groups who are interested in putting an end to this mystery. Sam's boyfriend, Kevin, did not give up either as he continued searching for years after the official search had ended. It's clear the disappearance changed his life completely, as the uncertainty associated with the disappearance can really eat away at you. It's easy to see why this case has captivated many people. It's one of those events where so much effort went into it that you have to ask yourself, why couldn't they find her? So let's move forward a bit to the purpose of this video. I sometimes get emails from psychics or those claiming to be psychics. Typically, they don't provide me with much substantive information to go on when it comes to potentially solving an actual missing persons case. And to be honest, even if they did, I would be very skeptical about taking any of it seriously, or more specifically, taking action on the tip and driving out to some remote location to wander out into the mountains. But about 6 months ago, in December of 2023, I was contacted by a fellow who asked if I was familiar with the Samantha Sayers case, which I was. I've been passively working on it for quite a long time now. So the guy who contacted me, as I understand it, is not in the psychic business per se, meaning he's not someone who just does it for a living, having people pay him to do readings and that kind of thing. It seems like he is more so someone who has psychic visions about certain cases and is mainly interested in trying to help. I corresponded with him somewhat regarding his method on how these visions work, and I don't feel like I would be able to do it any justice trying to explain it myself. My basic understanding of it is that it is some sort of meditative process. Anyway, in his vision, Samantha was attempting to return to her vehicle, but it was getting dark and she got lost among a maze of waterways, which, to be fair, there are a lot of creeks and rivers in the area. He had a vision of her using a dead tree for shelter, and later of dogs. He specified that they were more likely hunting dogs or something that came along later and scattered the remains. Most important, however, this man gave me 3 sets of coordinates pointing to an area where he believes Sam Sayers may have died. To be clear, as I understand it, the coordinates are not supposed to be an exact location where the remains would be found, but more like this is an area that needs to be looked at. And this area is north of Vesper Peak, along the south fork of the Stillaguamish River. It is also fairly close to the forest road that takes you up to the trailhead. So the first thing I ask myself when receiving something like this is this location a reasonable place for a missing individual to have gone? The answer? Possibly. This entire area was part of the original search, so it has been looked at before. How well they did that is a little more uncertain. One issue that comes up for me is that Sam was last seen heading south or southwest off of Vesper Peak, which is kind of the opposite direction of these coordinates. The man who gave me the coordinates was aware of this, though. He is well versed in all of the details of Sam's disappearance. His thoughts were that it is possible Sam realized she was lost and course corrected, heading back in the direction that she came, but obviously not on the trail anymore. That is a possibility that is worth considering. Ultimately, it is possible she could have wound up in this area. The question might immediately arise of, if Sam was so close to a road, why didn't she just walk to it? The man I spoke with felt that the river may have prevented her from crossing if the water was particularly high at the time, but ultimately I couldn't say if that was a reasonable theory or not without actually going to the spot to check it out for myself. Does it make any sense that someone could die so close to a road that would essentially mean safety? Okay, well, the immediate answer to that is yes, as you've probably seen it plenty of times on this channel. But as always, you can't really get a good understanding of an area without visiting it for yourself. Now, given that I had spent some time communicating with this psychic individual, and while I don't necessarily believe in psychic powers, he did seem like a genuine person who just wanted to help. The area that he marked to search did not outwardly appear to be too difficult a place to reach either, so I figured, what is the worst that could happen by checking it out? Might make for an interesting video, and searching anywhere in a region where someone is still missing is beneficial. And even if you're skeptical like me, you always think, well, what if? But don't everyone start sending me psychic coordinates to places, because I will do some vetting before I even consider doing this kind of thing. And just to be clear, this is the search area that I have outlined for myself. It includes the 3 coordinates that were sent to me, as well as an area downstream of there, because I figure it's very possible that gear or remains could have been washed out. But anyway, I waited for the weather in the Cascades to spruce up a little bit and for the snow to melt before venturing out to the Vesper Peak area. This is a very beautiful area of the Cascades. Before you know it, you're surrounded by towering snow-capped peaks. There's plenty to do, plenty to see, and good trails everywhere. The road to Vesper Peak is easily missed, at least by me. It's just a narrow gravel road hidden on the Mountain Loop Highway. The day I arrived in the area, I was very fortunate. The sun was out, it wasn't too cloudy, and it was nice and warm. It would have been the ideal day to spend some time searching the area, but it was already pretty late and there was only a couple hours of daylight left. So I'm down in the spot, or near the area where the coordinates were given to me. The coordinates aren't necessarily exact locations as far as I understand it. They're just giving me a general location. Hopefully this mic is working too. I left some my equipment at home. I don't even know if this is going to come across well in terms of audio. As usual, when you get to the spots, you are surprised by the terrain. This area is just a climb. Everywhere is just steep, and given that, it's really hard to traverse. And if there was someone in here, there's a lot of places a body could hide. You know, if someone was looking for shelter, there's a lot of downed trees and stuff where you could do that. I'll give a little look around. Unfortunately, it's already getting a little late on this first day, so I'm not going to spend much time out here. And I'll look around a little bit, but tomorrow I'll have a lot more time to spend, a lot more of the day. And it's going to take a while to really comb through this area as best I can and hopefully find something. But the good news is I'm here, and there's a ever so small chance. You know, I'm going out on a limb here, who knows? Anything could happen. Why not give it a shot? It's one of those things. So we'll keep looking around, and you'll see the footage of that. These are some good shots of the Stillaguamish River. This is the exact area where I will be searching. Unfortunately, the trees are so dense in some parts it's difficult to see the forest floor. Some key items that Sam had on her were a blue backpack, though some sources say black, and also some blue and black shoes. Obviously, it would be nearly impossible to notice black objects from this point of view, but I was hoping to catch a glimpse of some unnatural blue. Feel free to give it a look yourselves. Don't be too fooled by these images either. This area is difficult to navigate due to dense foliage and steep terrain. You will see that soon enough. I spent that night at the Red Bridge Campground nearby, a very nice and easily accessed campground. There are few spots, but it has a fair bit of seclusion and is close to the river. After spending some time in this area, I realized there are a number of campsites along the forest road to the Vesper Peak trailhead. Those would have probably made a good little base camp to work out of while searching an area not very far away. Still, I was in the area and I had one full day to work. Unfortunately, the next day turned out to be cold, overcast, and rainy. The typical Washington weather. I'm more than used to it, but it's not the most ideal when it comes to searching steep hillsides. As I drove back into the target area, I pulled over at one of the campsites that was quite a ways downriver and close to the northernmost section of my search area. Getting from the road down to the river in this section actually isn't too hard because the terrain is not super steep. It's just a longer walk. And before I continue on, just want to say I am out here wandering around in this dangerous area, which is obviously dangerous. It's wet today, so it's muddy. It's going to be even more dangerous. But I'm not doing this on my own. I have a GPS with me. I also carry a personal locator beacon, so anything that can and sometimes does go wrong, at least I'm semi-prepared for it. I do not recommend anyone doing this. Sometimes I wonder even why I'm doing this. But it's for a good cause, so we'll keep moving. One thing to keep in mind while I'm out here, and I just want to mention, the main things we're looking for is a blue backpack, blue and black shoes, and 2 hiking poles. Those are the main things that I think would be visible and still left after all this time that would be obvious to see. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to train my eyes to look for. Walking through the forest, all you can hear is the distant sounds of the rushing river. After navigating the easiest way down, I finally see the water moving through the trees. I'm constantly keeping my eyes peeled even though I'm on the roadside of the river, just in case. Again, the reason I'm checking this area that is downriver from the coordinates is that there's a possibility that remains or even equipment could get washed away. Well, we're getting to the right spot. This trip was, had its little hiccups to begin with in terms of what I'm shooting here with. This is on a cell phone, not my usual preferred item of choice to film with, but I grabbed the wrong film bag. So I'm kind of making do with what I got. Hopefully it comes across all right. And I know we got water rushing in the background. It's going to be like that probably for most of the rest of this whole little excursion because everywhere I need to look is kind of in and around the river. So Plan is to keep following the river up towards Vesper Peak area, but just in this little valley that I've probably already shown you on a map, and just look in this general area. This is where the psychic seemed to think Sam Sayers was. And again, so far I haven't seen anything. I haven't even seen garbage for the most part. It's actually quite clean down here. And it would be odd for her to head this way because she was last seen at the top of Vesper Peak, and a witness who saw her going down the southwest side, which is kind of the opposite direction of where I am right now. So, but the psychic fella, he seemed to know that already, that this didn't seem reasonable in a sense, but that she could have turned back once she realized she was heading the wrong direction and gone off trail and wound up here. It is plausible, and why not give it a look? So that's what we're doing. It's very hard to navigate around here. There's tons. It's like, you know, floods came through here and they've just brought tons of downed trees. And you're just constantly climbing over logs and trees. It's very hard to move. Thought it'd be a little easier to move down by the river. It's not the case. It's totally washed out, and you know, if Sam Sayers was down here, gosh, I can't imagine she would still be in one place, I guess what I'm trying to say. And she could be anywhere. I mean, under one of these logs. I mean, there's just so many places to look that you really don't have the time to look or check under, or maybe you even can't. So it's difficult, but that's how it goes. Walking up through the woods right now. Still no luck with anything, obviously, but these woods here are like a death trap in many ways. You can post hole through them. It looks like ground, but it's not. It's just layers and layers of dead foliage, and your foot will just go, you know, a foot or more into the ground out of nowhere. One of the many dangers out here. This part of the forest is actually quite nice because there's not a lot of bushes or anything you have to climb through like there is really close to the river. So making my way through here is easier, and just keeping my eye out, obviously. I spent a lot of time down here searching in and around the river, but this was only the beginning of the planned search, as it is the area farthest from the specified coordinates. Since I didn't want to waste all of my energy searching one spot, I decided to hike back up to the car and move further up the river. I decided it would be much easier just to drive up the road than to try and navigate against the constant obstructions of the river itself. Getting back to my car and heading further up the road, my plan was to stop and park along the forest road where it has this steep bend. There's a good little spot to park here, and also a pretty good view of the rest of the valley. This area is very steep, but it's still the quickest way down to the river and also gets you close to the coordinates. If you're careful, you can zigzag your way down safely, with a little bit of sliding. Getting back up is the more difficult part. It's just one of those situations where you have to take it slow and be careful. All the while, I try to keep an eye out for anything that seems out of place. It's also important to look for places of shelter or areas where someone could have burrowed. Getting down to the river, I noticed it wasn't overly deep, but it was still pretty fast moving. Crossing the river here isn't terribly hard if you have something to keep yourself propped up a bit. I really should have brought my hiking poles for this one. Still, I was carrying a pair of rubber boots to change into in anticipation of making these crossings where necessary. The trick is to just find the shallowest part of the river. It's clear from being in the area that this place has been washed out numerous times. If Sam ever did make it near the river or even passed away near it, it seems very likely that many items or even remains could have been washed further downstream. So I put on my boots. I'm going to try crossing the river here. If Sam was in this area, crossing the river here would have prevented her from getting to safety in the road, essentially, because this river kind of sucks. It's not super deep, but fast-moving current, and she wouldn't have had good footwear to do it. It's really slippery. I brought my boots to give it an attempt and be able to look at both sides. But yeah, I don't know if she was over on the other side, if she could have crossed here. I mean, you could, probably, if you were desperate, but you know, if you're tired and lost, you don't really want to get wet, especially if you don't know where you are. And if she was on the other side of the river, there's no telling if she actually knew this was the Stillaguamish and that on the other side was a road, although the road is not easy to access. It's up a cliff that, I mean, you can't see it. It's way up there. It's steep. It's a climb. It sucked coming down here, but I don't know. We'll see. If you were in this area and didn't know where you were, you would feel completely lost. There was no road you can see, there are no cars you can hear, and the side of the river that has the road just looks like an awfully steep hillside. If you didn't know that the road was there, there wouldn't be any incentive for climbing it. I doubt that someone would even make the attempt. I spent time looking around these areas, though it was difficult. Many areas were steep and you are constantly checking little hiding holes. It's a terribly slow process. Even today, I sometimes trick myself into assuming the ease of a task by looking at Google Maps. If you look at this area topographically, it really doesn't seem that bad. The reality on the ground is much different. You quickly end up wet, cold, and filthy. You realize how terrifying it would be to actually be lost in such an area. Sure, there are some flat spots that were open and more easily traveled, but for the most part, you're scrambling up and down hillsides. After a day of searching, I decided to climb back up to my car and head back to camp. By this time I was exhausted from the constant up and down climbing. While I went into this not expecting to find anything significant, you always hope, and that hope can lead to disappointment. Well, I'm calling it a day on this one. We've been here for hours. Haven't found anything of real substance. It's a really hard area to search, and it started raining again a little bit, and the area you have to come down to even get to the river is so steep. Started getting a little worried about it getting a little too moist and wet, and you know, I don't need to be climbing up slippery slopes. And besides, I've worked up quite a sweat already. I'm dying out here. Such a difficult area to search. And that's one thing that I think makes it worth searching, because even though this was part of the original search for Sam Sayers, this was covered in the maps I don't know who covered it and how well, but you can't cover this kind of area really well. I mean, you move so slow. There's so many little crevices under trees, holes here and there, where somebody could theoretically have burrowed, because that's, when people are dying, that's what they tend to do sometimes out in the wilderness. They will find a place to kind of burrow and pass away. And since that's the case, there is so many locations that need to be looked at. And between the 3 coordinates that I have, that is a ton of area. It looks small on a map, but that is a ton of area to have to look at. And it's going to take more than just me spending a good day out here to really cover that territory. So does this mean that the psychic guy was wrong? No, but it just means it needs a little more investigating. And I know people still come out here to this day looking, and it may be a worthy spot to search, maybe not. It's up to everyone who wants to give it a shot. But, be warned, it's not easy out here. There's no trails, and you're on a steep ledge here, basically. So, calling it on this one. You can only hope for success, but I wasn't expecting it. So, the search continues. In the end, I found nothing of any real interest. Some shotgun shells, beer cans, and what appears to be a piece of a Mylar balloon. Even though I didn't find anything, I still don't feel like I'm done in this area. I covered maybe 5% of the area that I wanted to, and it took a whole day. This just goes to show how valuable it is to have a lot of manpower when it comes to a search. 1 or 2 people is just not enough to cover the kind of ground that you need, especially in an area that is so dense. You could so easily overlook an important object sitting just feet from you. It really is hard to feel confident that you searched an area well, to the point that you can say, we don't need to check there again, it's been covered. I mean, I don't really feel like I completed this search at all. So I don't want to say that the psychic's information is wrong, because I can't say it with total certainty. I plan to go back to this area before the end of summer and spend more time there to continue looking. I think I'll go with the plan I mentioned earlier and actually camp near the search area. I'm sure some might see this as a waste of time. But the fact is, this was part of the original search area. There could be something there. There are some people who still go out to Vesper Peak to look for Sam. I'm sure they spend most of their time in other areas than where I was at, but people still go out and spend their time in these mountains looking off the beaten path for any sign of her. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to getting back into that area on a nice, hot, dry summer day where I'm not slipping and sliding all over the place. After you've gone to a place once and you know what to expect, you can really start planning for how you can make your next excursion easier. This happens pretty much any time I go anywhere. I get back and I start thinking, well, that would have been easier if I would have brought this, or I could have moved faster if I had that. I will be sure to keep everyone updated about any further searching I do in that area. Obviously, if I go back, I'll probably do some filming, though it's always nice to not have to have a camera affixed to one of my hands. Just remember, any searching done in the name of finding a missing person is not pointless, even if there's a 0.001% chance of any success. It's still a worthwhile cause. The fact is, we don't know where Sam could have got to. And every search up until now, conventional or otherwise, has turned up no answers to questions that have endured for years now. And if someone who claims they had a psychic vision shows me a place that seems remotely plausible, then I think it's worth checking into. It certainly gave me a bit of a sense of purpose and direction that I wouldn't have had if I was just trying to pick a random place on the map. I think that's actually a good thing. And if anyone would call that a waste of time, well, then I guess that's just the kind of time I like to waste. So until next time, thanks for watching.